Last 2 weeks, we talked about spiritual self care, 8 different topics on spiritual self care. Today, I'm going to complete the remaining 4 topics so that covers 12 different ways in which we can provide self care for our spiritual self. So let's go into the different ways in which we can take care of our spiritual self. And one may ask ourselves, why do we need to even take care of our spiritual self? If we take care of our physical body, our emotions, and our mental well being, isn't that enough? Our spirit doesn't need any self care. And the idea here is that we are all spiritual beings. And when we talk about spiritual self care, it is not about providing self care for our spirit as such, which doesn't need any self care. It's about providing us a certain environment wherein we can access the spirit within, and that's why it's spiritual, the accessing the spirit within. So that's all these 12 topics that are part of the map of self-care is just about creating an environment, both an external environment and an internal environment, where we can get in touch with our spirit. And when we are in touch with our spirit, even if it is for short periods of time, that provides the foundation for our well being on all other levels, including our intellectual self, our emotional self, energetic self, and physical self. And in that respect, our spiritual self care, in a way, is the foundation for all other forms of self care. So let's look at what we have covered so far and what are the 4 topics that we are going to be talking about today. So, this is the map of self care, and I think by now most of you are familiar with this map. And we are looking at the spiritual self care. So, these were the 6 topics that we have already covered, and the 2 topics here, which is balance between opposites and the power of intention. So, today I'm going to talk about the last 4 topics in spiritual self care. So, I'm just going to go through these because we have already talked about it in extensively. But the way all of these are forming the sequence is very beautiful, and maybe I will just talk about that. Values lay the foundation for everything we do, and when we pick a personal value that's close to our heart and base our life, base our efforts of self-care, base whatever we are doing in this external world on that personal value, then it sort of allows us to define the direction of our life and even the purpose of our life. So in that respect, spiritual values form the foundation, and the authenticity, again, is about being authentic on multiple levels. But the most important part of it is to know the real me and base my actions in the outer world on that authenticity, getting to know the real me, which is the essence of my spirit, which is the essence of my inner core. This particular topic talks about looking at the world beyond us, at the vastness, at the beauty and the awe of the world about around us. And then when we are able to expand our vision to perceive this gigantic, wonderful world, when we come back to ourselves, we bring that awe, we bring that wonder into our life. And because of that, we create an expansion in our own perception and in our own life, and are able to put our own stresses, our own pressures, our own problems in that context of the vastness of the world, and realize that it is manageable. If the world is taking care of itself on such a huge level, then whatever we are facing at this point in time, it is manageable. And the opposite of that is, yes, there is a vast world outside us, but there are vast treasures inside us as well. And when we look to that, then we can access the source of our own inner wisdom. And this source of inner wisdom is only available to us when we are able to declutter our inner world. And when we do that, all this treasure that is within us, our inner guidance, our inner GPS, so to speak, is available to us immediately. And enlightenment of a different kind, please do watch the video last week. It talks about the fact that enlightenment is not a destination, but a process, a journey. And each one of us is on that journey, and there is no comparison between my journey and somebody else's journey. I'm just looking to see how I can become lighter in different ways. And balance between opposites is again understanding balance is a very important part of my spiritual self care, but the way I attain balance is different depending on the opposites. Some opposites I need to acknowledge and practice both ends of the opposites. I just need to take turns. So, action and rest, being awake and taking part in activities, and having a very restful sleep, for example. So, both ends are needed. I need to experience both of those, but there are other opposites where it's a good idea for me to just be in the center, as close to the center as possible. And if I am currently going in a pendulum from this extreme to that extreme, then maybe I can start having shorter arcs, shorter shifts between the opposites. And finally, the pendulum can then settle right in the center. So that's the seventh need, balance between opposites. And the eighth topic is the power of intention behind our actions. When we are able to really tune in to why am I doing what I am doing, what is that intention behind my action, then that intention itself is going to power my actions and make my actions much more easier for me to do. So, those were the topics that we covered over the last 2 weeks. And today we are going to look at a few other topics, four more topics. The first one is alignment of head, heart, and hands. And there are many ways of understanding this alignment. We all talk about, am I aligned to this particular goal I have? I want this in this life, or I am trying to manifest this, the law of attraction, and many other ways of approaching. But then the topic comes, maybe I'm not aligned to that vibration. Maybe I need to do something to align myself to that frequency. And how do I go about doing it? And I want to approach it slightly differently, to say that we have different brains. The head brain, which is what all of us understand our brain as, but then we also have our heart brain and our gut brain. And when we are looking at our brains in these way, then we realize that each of these brains has a certain role, certain purpose, certain skill set for which they are very good. And when we are able to harness the power of the three brains and align the three brains to whatever it is that we want to do, then that alignment allows us to move forward again very easily and effortlessly. So, what are the three brains? The head brain is responsible for our creativity, our thinking, our logic, our rational part of the brain, making meaning from what we are seeing, imagery, visualization. All of that is the role of the head brain. If any of you have looked at the stars, or even in videos, if you have looked at stars in the sky, and then try to form a pattern to see what it is I'm seeing based on those stars. Or even if you're looking at tile patterns in the bathroom or in the kitchen and trying to see, can I mentally connect them and form a pattern there, or if I'm looking at puzzles or a Sudoku puzzle and saying, where is this going? Any of those actions are all parts or functions of the head brain. So the head brain is very good with doing all of these actions. Again, in the head brain itself, we also have the left brain and the right brain. And the left brain is very logical, the right brain is very creative, intuitive. So aligning both left and right brain to doing whatever it is we are doing again becomes another detail, another level of alignment within the head brain itself. When we look at the heart brain, now some of you may be wondering why is the heart called a brain? And modern scientists have realized that a brain is an organ that has lots of neurons, and it's not just neurons that make the brain. The brain then receives a lot of signals from the outer world, and based on those signals, it then sends messages out saying, based on these signals, this is what I would suggest you do. So it's like information coming in, information is processed, and then information action is being sent out. Commands are being sent out to say, okay, based on this information and my understanding, please do this. That is the nerve center of the brain. And based on this criteria of what a brain does, it's not just the head brain that is a brain. Our heart has tremendous network of neurons. And in fact, the network of neurons in the heart is much more than that of the head brain. And the heart does all of that as well, receiving information and sending commands out as well. So, heart is definitely a brain, and many scientists have now come to accept the heart as the brain. So, what does the heart brain do? The heart brain is responsible, as is very obvious, for compassion, for intuition, for our values, for emotions, love, this connection that we have with people, with ideas, a longing, a belonging, as well as connection that we have with people, our desires, our goals, our dreams. All of these are the domain of the heart. And when our heart and our head brain are aligned to what it is that we want to do, then that becomes a very, very potent alignment. But that is not the only brains. There is a third brain that we have, and that is the gut brain. And this gut brain is the seat of all our courage. It's also the source of our self preservation. If you look at our immune system, 80% of the immune cells in the body, as well as the microbiome, is located in the gut. And when we say, oh, my gut instinct told me to stay away from this place, or my gut instinct told me there is danger here, I want to avoid it, all of that is the area of the gut brain. So, gut brain is responsible for our self preservation, is also giving us courage to move through our fears, and is also responsible for actions, for identity, habits, instinct. All of those are the domain of the gut brain. So, if we have a deep desire to do something, and that is something that's I'm passionate about, and that is the area of my heart brain. Now, the head brain, if it is aligned with this vision that the heart brain has, would come up with creative solutions. It would come up with the plans. It would come up with the logic. It would then look at the situation around us and say, okay, what can be done? Make plans. All of that would be the head brain aligning with the heart brain. But then when the gut comes in, what the gut is doing is it's saying, okay, this is the vision, this is the plan, but where are my habits? Where are my fears? I need to work in tandem with this. So I need to work on my habits, instincts and habits. And maybe I need to fine tune and change my habits to be in line with this vision. So that's where the gut brain would come in with courage to manage, push through the fears that I may have. Even gut instinct to say that, okay, this is the plan, but maybe we need to fine tune the plan because my gut instinct says this is not a safe route to take. Let's take a slightly different route. So, all of these would be the domain of the gut brain. And when the head, the heart, and the hands, and I put the hands as the gut brain because that's responsible for action. When the head, the heart, and the hands are aligned in this beautiful way, then whatever we are aiming for becomes easier. We are basically going through a highway. But if these are not aligned, what would that look like? I have the vision, I have the plans, but I'm so lost in my fears, past experiences. I'm so lost in my old habits that are not in line with my current vision. Then the gut is going to be in one side, the head and the heart are going to be in another side. Obviously, there is no alignment here, and each is going in a different direction. And that's when we feel the drag. That's when something feels heavy, something feels like this is too difficult. First of all, identifying where the alignment is not happening and then working on that area in a very meaningful manner would allow us to get harness this power of alignment of head, heart, and hands. And that is one way in which we can provide our spiritual self care. So that is about alignment. And the next need that we have is self compassion. This is something I wanted to highlight is that this huge framework, this understanding of how we can take care of ourselves is not a to do list. It's not about saying, oh, please do this. Oh, you have not done this, you have not done that. No, this is not, this whole self care will be defeated if I'm going to be hard on myself. If I'm going to say, look, you're not doing this properly, you have not done this for a long time. I think you can do better, and having this to do list and being hard on ourselves and judging ourselves, that is not the purpose of this framework. No self care is possible if I'm being hard on myself. Self compassion is the key to self care. So, self compassion, I have highlighted as a separate topic because it is so huge, so huge. We may have very good intentions in saying that I need to take care of myself, I need to do all this for myself. But if I am not doing that from a space of self compassion and understanding, then it is counterproductive. So let's do whatever we want to do by practicing self compassion. And in this context, I wanted to highlight Marshall Rosenberg's framework. Marshall Rosenberg is very famous for his nonviolent communication framework. When we judge ourselves, we are being violent on ourselves. We are being hard on ourselves. We may not be aware of it, but that's what we are doing. We are practicing violence on ourselves. So it is in this context that Marshall Rosenberg's framework of nonviolent communication is very useful to understand whether I am practicing self compassion. And very often, when I talk about self compassion, we may ask ourselves, okay, I understand the theory, self compassion, we need to be kind, but what does it look like in this situation? What can I do? How can I practice this self compassion? And that's where his questions come in very handy. In any situation, ask ourselves, what am I observing right now? So I have been busy the last 2, 3 days preparing for a trip, and there are so many things I needed to take care of because we have not traveled for 2 years. And there are so many different regulations, things are changing from time to time. So when I am doing that, I was really, really stretched yesterday and this morning as well. So in this situation, the question that I needed to ask is, what am I observing right now? And what I observed is a very heavy head, and my mind going racing in so many different directions with so many different to-do lists. So if I am observing that, the next question then is, what am I feeling right now? Observing is something that's happening from the head. Feeling is something that's happening from the heart, and both are important. What I'm feeling right now was feeling drained. And in that situation, when I'm feeling drained, the next question then to ask is, what do I need right now? And when I asked this question, what do I need right now? What I needed right now is a break, is a break from the thinking process. And that's what I did. I know there are so many things to do. I know there are tons of things to do, but really I was not being effective at all with a overthinking mind and my heavy head. So I needed that break, and that's what I did. And the next thing question is there a request that I need to make of myself or somebody else? And the request that I needed to make of myself was to take a pause, take a break, lie down, drink water, all of those things that I needed to do that I talk about. I needed to practice all of that in that particular situation. And is there a request I need to make of someone else? I had to call in to two of my clients that I had scheduled for sessions and say, look, I can't make it today because I wouldn't have been of any help to them. My mind, my head was really racing. I wouldn't have done justice to the sessions. So that's the next thing I had to do. I had to draw my boundaries and say, this is the request I'm making of myself and of someone else. So, this framework, this is such a beautiful, such a simple framework of practicing self compassion in any situation. What am I observing right now? Is that I need to make of myself or someone else? And as I'm reading out these questions, the thing that comes to my mind is the word right now. So it is about being self-compassionate, not in future, not in the past, but right now in this present moment. Because self-compassion is about taking care of ourselves in this present moment. So this is the beautiful framework that Marshall Rosenberg has got, and feel free to use it as a framework for self-compassion. The next topic that we have is understanding meditation as a self care tool. Now, meditation has many different applications and is practiced and taught in many different contexts. In this particular framework, I'm suggesting that we practice meditation as a self care tool. Why as a self-care tool? This is a activity. So you can see this. This is an activity that I like to talk about. Assume that this is the mind, and this morning and yesterday, my mind was spinning, spinning, and spinning so much with so many thoughts that it was chaotic. When this happens, what is the way out? Meditation. And what meditation does is it's not any particular form of meditation. It's just a way to give my mind a break. What do? I can follow any meditation practice that I may be familiar with. And if I'm familiar with no meditation practice, that is fine too, because it's about giving the mind a break. And I can do that by just observing my breath. And that's what I did. The mind would go away and say, oh, this thing needs to be done, that needs to be done, the health declaration form, what about this certificate, all that. And then we just bring it back and say, follow your breath, follow your breath, and just observe your breath. And I did that for just a few minutes. And when I finished that practice of 5 minutes, my mind started settling down, as you can see in this. From that muddy water, it settles down. And if I'm able to practice it for a longer period of time, I'm going to eventually get crystal clear water right at the top. And when that happens, then I have the power of my mind to apply to anything that I need to do. And whatever I needed to do, maybe I had tons of things in my to do list. If my mind was racing, that mind was clouded, I couldn't have achieved all those items in my to do list in that state of mind efficiently. By giving my mind a break, I make up for that time by being able to clear things that I need to do much more quickly, much faster, and much more efficiently and effectively as well. So, giving ourselves this break of meditation, a minute's meditation, 2 minutes meditation, 5 minutes meditation, pepper it through the day. The more we have on our to do list, the more is this need of meditation, not as a spiritual practice, though that is equally important, but just as a self care tool. And if we are able to do this consistently, we will be able to tap on the power of our own self. So let me go back and share a beautiful quote on meditation. I really love that quote. And this is Jiddu Krishnamurti's quote. To understand the immeasurable, the mind must be extraordinarily quiet, still. The mind is the means through which we are approaching our spirit. It is in the way. And if I need to understand my inner self, my spirit, as long as the mind is cloudy, I don't have access to my inner spirit, my inner source of wisdom. I don't have access to that. So, quietening the mind, even periodically, even for short periods of time, allows me to access my inner bliss. And that is the last topic of the spiritual self care. Okay, so before I go on to that, what meditation does is it allows me to declutter my inner world. And I did talk about it in an earlier topic. They're all related, everything leads to everything else. So when I'm able to practice meditation regularly, that is one of the best tools that I have to declutter my inner world. And when I understand the mind, when I allow our mind to settle in and see where it is going. When we looked at our self care logo, the map of self care right at the top there, you have self love and acceptance in the center, and around it is self awareness. That self awareness, how does it come? It comes when we start practicing meditation, when we start becoming aware of the mind and saying, oh, look, the mind wants a movie. Oh, look, the mind wants a pizza. Mind wants chocolate. And there's no harm in giving us all of that, no harm in craving for all these. But that awareness that my mind is craving for this, that is the start of self awareness. And that also creates one level of distance between the mind and myself. And when I'm able to create that one level of distance between my mind and myself, then I'm able to move the mind gently but firmly to where I want it to go. I cannot force the mind, say, you must not have chocolate. I cannot do that, because eventually it'll backfire with a whiplash effect. So that any form of control on anybody, including ourselves, is going to backfire. But by creating that one level of distance between the mind and myself, I'm able to observe the mind and say, oh, the mind wants this. Oh, that's good. Let me give the mind some chocolate. And in that process of giving one piece of chocolate, I'm able to satisfy that craving. Able to spend time with that craving. And instead of gorging on tons of chocolates, maybe just one or two is enough for the mind. And I'm able to bring the mind back to what I need it to eat, something nutritious. So this is just one example. But this kind of understanding the mind and one level of separation from the mind allows me to be self-aware and allows me that ability to take care of myself without the mind whipping up a frenzy and trying to control me with its cravings. So that's about the power of meditation as a self-care tool. When I am able to do this accessing my inner bliss becomes easy. And for that, I just want to share something. So, this is a quote that has influenced my understanding of bliss. There was a period in time when I was thinking about bliss and trying to visualize some kind of imagery to understand bliss. And at that time, this quote of Sri Sathya Sai Baba came to my awareness. I was reading, and randomly this quote popped up. And it was so beautiful. It was just changed my whole perspective on bliss. Bliss is not an experience, bliss is the experiencer. What that means is that this bliss that I am craving for, happiness, pleasure, joy, they're all gradients of this bliss. Pleasure, happiness, joy, just increasing my experience of the bliss. And finally, bliss. That bliss is not something I need to look for in the outside world. That bliss is within me. In fact, I am bliss. Just as we say, I'm love, I'm bliss. So when I'm able to see that, why am I not able to see that regularly? And that is because of my mind. My mind comes in the way. So, working with the mind using meditation allows me to work with the mind, become aware of the mind, and then eventually transcend my mind, even if it is for short periods of time, to access that bliss. And Deepak Chopra says the same thing: bliss is not a feeling, but a state of being. In the state of bliss, everything is loved. So the idea is I don't need to do something to put myself in that state of being. It's already there within me. I just need to do something to clear the obstacles that are coming in the way of my experiencing that state of being. And it is available to us at all times. So let me play for you a beautiful short video that highlights this whole concept. As you can see, this athlete is using the pole vault to lift herself. She's using the pole to lift herself up. And just at the right moment, she releases the pole so that she is able to cross the bar. And this imagery of the pole vault is something that's very beautiful and something that's I have been reflecting on for a while. And what that is we use the mind like the pole that the athlete used. We use the mind to lift ourselves up. How do we lift ourselves up? By quietening the mind, by experiencing short periods of silence where the mind is not making too much noise. And when we are able to do that and lift ourselves up at the right moment, when we are just near that bar, we need to let go of the mind. Just release the pole. And when we do that, then we have access to our inner bliss. So we talk about mindfulness. And mindfulness is one of those tools where we are able to release the chatter of the mind by being aware of what the mind is saying at this point in time. So, at this point in time, slowing that chatter down by paying attention to every word, every thought, every feeling, everything that's coming into my mind, when I'm able to do that, I'm reducing the volume of the mind. And by reducing the number of thoughts that are racing through my mind, I'm reducing the impact of the mind. And they may come a period of time, even if it is like a split second where no thought is there. That is the gap between two thoughts. And there I have access to that inner bliss. I don't need to wait for that thoughtless state. I can just go with when the thoughts are not racing. So, for example, when I stir this up a lot, I don't have access to what is inside. But when it is resting like this, yes, there are some mud particles on the top, but there is some level of clarity. So if there was something here, stones or whatever it is, I would be able to see that. So clearing this out, allowing the mind to rest using meditation, allows me to access my inner bliss little by little, little by little. And sometimes in the initial stages, it may not be bliss, it may just be joy, it may just be happiness, it may just be a state of well being. Whatever that level, they're all parts of that bliss that is available to us. Should I undertake that inner journey to get in touch with that inner bliss? It's available. And when I make that effort, I have the experience of that bliss, which is already within me. So that's all I had for this recap of spiritual self care, spiritual needs. Do share with me your insights, your takeaways. What are your thoughts on all these topics? And next week, I will be resuming a release of weekly videos. And the first thing that I am going to be doing is to talk about how we can use this framework. Yes, this framework is there. There are tons and tons of topics in this framework. But how do we use this framework as part of the self care? So, that is the topic of the next video. It'll not be a live, it'll just be a recorded video. Do tune in for that topic and look forward to your thoughts. And thank you so much for being part of all these lives. Bye bye. Namaste. Do subscribe and hit the bell button for more weekly content on self care. And if you want even more actionable content on self care, do join me in the Facebook group for weekly lives, discussions, and more tips.